Following the suspected bombing of a Russian aeroplane in Egypt this week, is it time to take full military action against IS?
Peter Hitchens.
No. First of all, it's suspected and not proven, and we shouldn't rush to do things of this kind. Secondly, the idea that taking military action against Islamic State is going to reduce the terrorist risk is an absurdity. The military action which this country and the United States in particular have taken in the Middle East and the other interventions which you've undertaken in the Arab world over the past 10 or 15 years, and indeed in Afghanistan, have increased the risk to us repeatedly. We have no idea what we're doing in these places. We destroyed the stability of Iraq and replaced it with the chaos out of which IS grew. We've destabilized Syria and turned millions of reasonably contented people into corpses and refugees. We wrecked Libya and turned that into a failed state with our brilliant intervention there. What is it that makes us think still, after all these stupid, unforgivable failures of incompetence and ignorance, that we are going by another military intervention suddenly to make it all right? It really is time that as a country we realise that we have finished. Can I just challenge that? This constant chorus from the government about these moderates in Syria. The moderates in Syria are exactly the same people who they urge us to be on guard against in schools and everywhere else in Britain. They're not moderates. They're utterly and completely dedicated to the extremist Islamic cause. And we propose to back them because actually British foreign policy is not made in London anymore. It's made in Saudi Arabia. And our attitude towards all these things is governed by our desire to please Saudi Arabia and no other sense.
All right, Peter, Justin, just reply to that, and then I'll come to you in the second row.
Thank you. I actually met the leader of the Syrian moderate opposition in Parliament yesterday. He wasn't the kind of person that you've just talked about. These are people who are standing up against a brutal Assad regime that's barrel bombing ordinary civilians in Syria. They talked to me about how there are 500,000 Syrians now who are totally cut off from any help that can be provided to them, and they need the rest of the world to provide assistance and also to help them tackle ISIL too, so that in the end of this, when we do reach a political settlement, there's a Syria there for them to build a future again in.
How can you claim to be against the supposed tyranny of Assad when this week your Prime Minister has welcomed the leader of Egypt, who recently killed hundreds of his own people and runs a regime if not as repressive as Assad, similarly repressive?
All right, Pete,
how can you claim to be principled in this matter?
You're right.
You're not.
Isn't it worth noting that ISIS was able to grow because of our intervention and because of our destabilising of the region? So surely, if we intervene again, it's just going to give rise to something even worse.
And the woman behind you.
I want to say that ISIL is a new phenomenon, not only because the Iraqi intervention, the Western intervention, but now we have ISIL in Libya, we have ISIL in Egypt, where previously we didn't have any. And that's because the West is not supporting the transition to democracy in the Middle East. The Gulf countries and the West have, as Peter said, Sisi was here this week, and this man has killed thousands of people, and he's been received with great honours in the UK. And can you imagine that? There's a risk of a bomb on a plane on the Russian jet after actually having such a security breach having happened. And he's presenting himself as the man of stability. He's the one who's going to beat ISIL in Libya and ISIL in Sinai. And I think that that's absolutely, it's not only military. You don't have to bomb people in the Middle East to stop ISIL. You've got to stop people turning to ISIL as a solution to a virus. We want the ballot box back, and because the UK is welcoming a man who threw our votes into the rubbish bin in Egypt, then this is a very bad sign for the region, and I think the opposite should have been done. He should never have been welcomed here.
Absolutely.